If you're in a league bigger than 10, good luck.
He's been struck with everyone's favourite Madden curse.
I just think you drafted poorly.
Very close to taking him at 3.
If you're not drafting Kyle Pitts first overall, I don't know what you're doing, honestly. Welcome back to the Early Hours podcast. Week 1 is fast approaching, but this is a fantasy football special. You may be thinking about drafting this week really close to the line, or you may have drafted already. Hopefully, this episode can tell you if you've picked correctly or not, but look, this is not drafting advice. Guys, you're looking very the part. I'm loving the jerseys. Quick overview of our league last season. Just remind me, and the viewers actually, who won the league?
You've really not left it long, have you, to get your showboating in? No, well, yeah. Going for Tua, a.k.a. one of us 3. Goody made the winning moves. He got the title. He was the Fantasy Super Bowl champion. Ring to prove it.
Have you got it on standby? So, unfortunately, I don't have the ring with me. It's Oliver's possession. Does it feel good to hold greatness?
I'll hold it myself one day.
One day, yeah, but not that one. That ring itself actually went to Super Bowl 59 with me. Some pictures on screen just to show you what that meant to me. It was a pretty special moment. And like Oliver says, the name this year for the fantasy team is going for Tua. I'm going for the second ring. So that's what we've got to compete with. It's an 8-man league for us this year. We drafted a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, we're just going to talk about really, are you happy with your draft? Is there anyone that, you think people should know about when it comes to drafting, but don't try and give away all of your cards because I'm sure there's people listening in our league who are also going to want these picks. So yeah, I was 6th overall pick. It was based on last year's projections. We had a 6-man, now we're an 8-man. So I was 6th. Oliver, you were 5th. So now, as you were down in 3rd pick, tell us about your first pick.
So Kittle's Kittens this year are going for another strong run. We were the regular season title winners last year and the reigning MVP of our league. So round 1, 3rd overall, I took with an ADP of 2nd. I took Bijan Robinson, who I was a proud owner of last year. We're expecting big things from Bijan this year. We're expecting him to have a heavy old workload in Atlanta and hoping maybe that, the top 2 in our league and maybe most leagues, Chase and Barkley, maybe they can't do it 2 years in a row. So will we see Bijan be overall number 1? I think that's what a lot of specialists are saying.
And he's in a prime spot, isn't he, Bijan? Because really, I'm going to come on to it in a second, but let's talk about wide receivers first. Drake London also, by the way, a very good pick this year. Someone you can maybe try and get in the 3rd or 4th round. Actually quite a sneaky lower ADP than sort of what he's worth, I think. But really, Bijan's not got much competition, and we know that he can be a receiving back as well. Other than that, Penix is going to turn to who? Kyle Pitts? Is he the...
If you're not drafting Kyle Pitts first overall, I don't know what you're doing, honestly.
That's it. 101 for Kyle Pitts. That's the only way. That's the only strategy for success. But no, I think you've got a great pick, and I think you were very fortunate to get him when you did. I was confident that he was going to go off the board in sort of pick 1 or 2 based on ADP, but no, you got him at 3, which was incredible.
There's no surprise, though, that Chase and Barkley did go 1 and 2. That was to be expected in a lot of mock drafts and projections. Yeah. Do you think that they are overhyped? Do you think they can do it again, or are they doomed to fail this year?
Well, with Barkley, it's all about workload, isn't it? The chances of a back who's just broke all the records and had 2,000 yards going again is very unlikely. And unfortunately, he's been struck with everyone's favourite Madden curse. So we saw it last year with CMC, although we'll come on to CMC shortly, I'm sure. I think he's going to have a hell of a year. Could finish as RB1 overall. It's going to be tough for Saquon to match what he did. So ultimately, then you are looking at a regression in terms of performance. So that's interesting for managers who've picked him. And then Chase, again, broke records. How are you meant to top that? You've probably seen Chase and Barkley at their peaks last season. So, that's not to say that you can't win. You can absolutely win with those players if they stay healthy, but it's going to be hard. They need to stay healthy, and they need to try and outperform what they did last year. It's near impossible.
Yeah, definitely no easy feat there. Oliver, you were 5th overall pick. Gibbs is off the board at this point. Who did you go for your first?
was a tough choice. Jefferson was still on the board, obviously at the time, and still is battling an injury. So there was cause for concern there. I'm also not typically someone that likes to go for a zero RB strategy early in the draft, but yeah, I risked it. I've gone for someone a lot higher than his ADP. I actually went for Devon Achane. Now you should be able to get Devon Achane sort of second round. I took him at 5 in our draft. I'm just looking at some stats here. Usually, I'm just looking at his average ADP. Roughly goes 15th overall. So, yeah, that late sort of first round, obviously, we're a smaller league. So you're looking at that second round. But a lot of production last year. I think his ceiling's really high. Production in 24 with 907 rushing yards, 6 TDs, and 78 receptions for 592 yards. Big, big threat. But unfortunately, it's that flaw that's the concern with Achane. Luckily, there's no one. Last year, he had to share snaps with Mostert. They've moved him on. There's no one really there battling him for those snaps this year. And obviously, Tyreek is still questionable. Relationships maybe not there with Tua. Waddle, I do see taking some snaps, but they traded Jonnu Smith. So it's interesting. I think Achane's really
you've gone big or go home there. It's like you say. I personally think, especially for Ali, you probably could have got him in the second. But I'd like to just say a big thank you for not taking Justin Jefferson. I know it is also a risk from my part because of the injury, and also, everyone wants to. I think you should be drafting a running back in the first. It's more of a competitive slot to fill, and there's not as many people who can produce those sort of big points. But look, I'm happy with Justin Jefferson as the 6th overall in our league. His ADP is around the 5 mark, so we've got him pretty much where you'd expect him to be taken. Like you say, he is still battling the injury, and he's got a new QB with JJ McCarthy. We don't even know if that's a proven relationship yet in the league, but come on, Justin Jefferson is Justin Jefferson. He's going to ball out. He's going to hit the gritty every week. So that's who I've picked.
This is it with Justin Jefferson. It's a bit of a risky one. Obviously, one, he was battling the injury, still is. He's the lowest in terms of ADP he's been in a long time coming into fantasy drafts. He's been battling at 1, 2, 3 minimum, really. So to get him at 5 is a steal. But yeah, it's that QB relationship. It's going to be interesting.
I think they're both due to be fit for week 1, though, aren't they? So
we'll see.
I think if they can hit the ground running, especially JJ with McCarthy and obviously Addison as well, it's pretty important.
Yeah, the Addison thing's a little bit tricky because obviously he's got a suspension looming. So hopefully that does mean JJ can be more of a target, but that doesn't last forever. Moving back down the snake then, I got the first pick of the second round between all three of us on this podcast. I went for Bucky Irving. I think he's going to, I think he is going to ball out. Unfortunately, he's actually not at the club anymore, but we'll go on to why he's been shipped away from going for Tua further into the episode. But yeah, Bucky Irving, I think, was a pretty decent shout. I had to fill that RB slot, and it just basically he talks for himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Bucky Irving, I think this year is going to be an absolute steal. He's someone that it's funny you were taking the mick out of me taking Devon Achane as early as I did, but I just think you had to take Bucky that early. I think somebody, i.e. myself or someone else in our league, would have taken a punt on him a little bit later. I think he's going to be at the very least an unbelievable flex, but I think genuinely, I do believe he's going to finish as a top 5 running back this year. He's not competing with Rachaad White. Realistically, Rachaad White's also injured at the minute. We'll come on to the Bucs a little bit more because maybe in the sleeper section, but I think there's loads of potential.
So the only thing I would say was it was a pretty ballsy move when the likes of Genty, Neighbours, Henry, St. Brown are all still on the board. I think it's a bit of an alternate pick, which I think it keeps the draft interesting because I think round 1 was pretty safe, apart from the WiIl Achane pick.
But it's worth mentioning,
whether that's safe or silly, I'm not sure.
It's worth mentioning as well for those listeners out there that are in bigger leagues, larger leagues, whether that's I'm in a larger work league, for example. You're probably going to have to make moves if you're confident in players like Bucky Irving. In the way we've just discussed, you're probably going to have to make those pushes for players like him in your second rounds. I mean, we'll come on to it in a little bit, but there was a sort of a tight end mania in our league. So yeah, you've got to make those pushes sometimes if you're confident in a player.
Yeah, well, look, let's keep focusing on our second round picks. As it stands. So Oliver, who did you go for?
So I took Jonty, funnily enough.
Another running back, which is wild. He's doubled up.
Listen, I said it at the start, you cannot go zero RB. You've got to back your running backs. So I went Jonty. Again, most leagues, He's going around pick 7, between 7 and 9 is the tip. ESPN actually ran a mock draft and he went ahead of Barkley and CMC.
That's wild for someone who's unproven.
It is wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is wild. It's wild for someone that's averaging 3 yards a carry
3.1, yeah.
in the off-season, in the pre-season, I should say. So that was interesting. But look, his ceiling is legit. He is definitely, we're talking about top 5 RBs. This guy and workloads, this guy doesn't have any competition. And if we've spoke about it all preseason, if we look at it, systematically, Pete Carroll is going to run that ball as much as he can. He always has done, and he's done it in Seattle. He's not going to change overnight. He had elite college production, 6.6 yards per carry. Rushing yards 3,948 for 43 touchdowns. Obviously, that's over the course of his college career. But yeah, he is a back with a mission.
And Spells, rounding off your second round pick.
Yeah, so obviously all those guys were off the board. Neighbours went just one before me. I think I would have probably gone for this guy anyway. There is one or two that I missed out on, which was disappointing. I went for Derrick Henry at the Ravens, which I was super surprised he was still on the board at 14. He had an ADP of 12. The Ravens have played a really run-heavy offense so far in preseason. Obviously, no Lamar Jackson, which could impact it. But, last year he was just such a workhorse. And I think we'll probably see that again. He's not getting any younger. At some point, he's got to drop off, but I'm hoping not this year. So, yeah, Derrick Henry's my second pick.
It's funny as well, isn't it? I was just going to jump in on that. The contrast between Jonte and Derrick Henry, you couldn't pick two players further apart, but they're out for the same thing, and they're actually probably very close in the production they can offer. But yeah, the floor is certainly more guaranteed with Henry, so nice pick.
We'll quickly just touch upon our thirds really quickly, just to give you an idea of scope. It was Jonathan Taylor for me in round 3, but that was after these two opened up what can only be described as the floodgates. The floodgate was open just before Smell's pick. Smells went for George Kittle. The tight end market, the tight end tap just opened up. It was Sam Laporta for you, Oliver. I had to quickly bank Jonathan Taylor, so I ended up drafting Hockenson in the 4th. The tight end market is something that you cannot overlook, and there's not that many great options on the board. If you're in a league bigger than 10, good luck is what I would say there. But yeah, in terms of, let's look ahead or look back to players you wish you'd have been able to draft. Oliver, I have to come clean here. The only reason I drafted Bucky Irving was just so you couldn't have him. And it's really nasty to say that. It is awful, but it did give me some collateral. Is there anyone else that you were eyeing up on that draft list, but it was just pipped 1 or 2 picks before you?
Yeah, I made a push for him in the trade market afterwards and managed to get a deal done, but I would have loved to have taken Brian Thomas. He is now with my team, as I just mentioned. But yeah, I'd have loved to have taken Brian Thomas. I think he's still the certified wide receiver 1 for the Jags. Cohen's come in and has, a really sort of offensive-minded, he's an offensive coach at the end of the day, now in a head coach role, so he's going to be pushing for getting the ball downfield. He's probably going to try and see a bit of resurgence out of Trevor Lawrence, who's got a big arm, as we know. So yeah, I think he's going to be a really strong candidate for sort of top 5 receivers, probably just on the fringe of outside that top 5 zone. So I think I've got myself a good pick there. But yeah.
What I would say with Brian Thomas is he went probably about 13 or 14 picks after Neighbours. I'm not saying it's going to happen this year. I don't necessarily think he's a better wide receiver than Neighbours, but he had a much better season last year, both on the field and in fantasy. So if Brian Thomas Jr. is there, start of 3rd, in the 3rd round, even end of the 2nd, depending on the size of the draft, he's a solid wide receiver 2 or maybe even a 1 as an upside.
Yeah, and for those that are struggling with, again, those bigger leagues that are struggling with draft stock, that point you've made there around the difference between Neighbours and Thomas can be really beneficial to your team. So absolutely one to watch.
Smells, who did you have your heart on that you didn't quite manage to get over the line?
I think it's probably no surprise for me. I was concerned with the snake order because I wasn't going to be taken till pick 14. However, I think the general consensus in expert drafts was that McCaffrey could have even fallen into the late teens, early 20s. I think if a certain member of our league hadn't taken Christian McCaffrey, he could have fallen to 14 as well, because you could easily see him falling behind Irving, Jonty, Neighbours, etc. So yeah. I was actually quietly confident I could potentially get McCaffrey at 14. If he is there around the, I'd say 5 to 10 mark for people, I would say get him all day. I was very, very close to taking him at 3. very, very close
Wow.
taking him at 3.
That's really high praise for someone who missed pretty much the majority of last season and is particularly unproven. But like you've been saying, he's had a good training camp and he could bounce back if he stays fit. For me, it was Lad McConkey. Oliver, you did me in actually. That was over towards your team, leader of the pack. It was someone who I wanted, someone who bailed me out of many tricky spots last season. He actually was the determining factor between the playoff game between me and Smells last season in fantasy. So definitely, if he's on the board in the second or third, I'd be going for McConkey. I think he's going to have a blinder. But going back to CMC, he was actually the talk of the town, one of the biggest trades. Now, look, certainly don't ship half of your team off before week 1. I do not recommend doing that. But for me, I love to trade. So I was throwing a lot of things at the wall, seeing what would stick. And ultimately, I came out with a trade accepted. Coming into my club was CMC and a questionable Tyreek Hill. In return, I had to give up Chase Brown, Devontae Adams, Xavier Worthy, Bo Nix, and Sam Laporta. That is a lot of names going out the door. There's a few mixed reactions here. Smells, you think that I'm an absolute scam artist. Oliver, I think you think that maybe it may have been fair. Other people think I may have overpaid. It'd be great to hear what everyone thinks actually, in the comments or wherever. But an interesting trade there, very, very name heavy. What do you think of that trade? And is there any other blockbusters that have gone down before week 1 in our league?
Can I just say how you've just traded away Sam Laporta, yet you started with TJ Hockenson, who, by the way, Goody, you took the pick before Lad McConkey.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
We moved, basically.
It's one of
So
them.
where's TJ now is my other question.
I actually couldn't tell you where Hockenson is, but I acquired Sam Laporta from our good friend Oliver here. I gave up, was it CD Lamb and Bucky Irving?
Are we really going to go down the trade
coming
into
my team for that was T. Higgins and Sam Laporta. It was actually a very, very nice trade, and that gave me some collateral there to go and get CMC. It's funny how things work out. Again, don't recommend you trading half your team after you draft them before week 1, but it is a good laugh at the end of the day.
I think, just quickly weighing in on this, and I don't think we should linger on it too much because we're a very small league in comparison to a lot of leagues, but just for the fun of it, we do like to trade a lot pre-week 1.
I love to trade.
I think if you look at the wider picture, and I might be coming at this from a different angle to Matt, for example, but I actually think it worked for both teams. If you look at the rosters, there was a couple of spots that needed fill-in for with Chase Brown. You let go, you wave goodbye to Devontae Adams. And actually, yeah, it worked for both teams. I think it was largely a successful trade. And actually, if you look at the risk involved with CMC
And Tyreek.
versus probably the certainty that you get, that safer floor that you get with Chase Brown this year, I think it's interesting. And also, actually, now you've acquired CMC, they've brought Brian Robinson in, haven't they, as well? So that's going to have an impact on his numbers. So actually, fair enough trade. There was enough collateral went the other way.
I think when you're trading for names like that, people are always going to have their opinions. Matt, I'm sure you've got your own opinion. You've been knocking on my door every other day for that man, actually. So
Got to give it a go.
Absolutely.
You do have to give it a go. But yeah, not drafting advice, definitely. But going on to rounding out this episode is some sleeper picks. I'd love to go out and tell you a massive sleeper to go and draft Matty Golden, but I don't think he's a sleeper. I think he's genuinely going to be a very, very useful and consistent weapon in the Packers wide receiver room. But in terms of my sleeper pick, I just picked him up just the other day after the Brian Robinson news broke. It's Krosky Merritt. He's the rookie. The Washington Commanders is now looking to be a firm RB1 in that room, and I think he's rostered by only about 50% of people overall on the NFL Fantasy app. So if you've got him in some of the later rounds, if he's available, I'd definitely go out and pick him up.
100%, aka Bill, they call him, don't they? On the
Big Bill,
yeah,
on Twitter and so on. But yeah, no, great pick. I really love that. I love that acquisition. I think it's a true sleeper pick, and I think you can have some joy sort of around week 3 and 4 when you can say I told you so to the rest of the league. So definitely want to keep an eye on. I went for someone who, for the Buccaneers, had an awesome training camp, had a great preseason. He has taken advantage and grabbed the opportunity by both hands while Chris Godwin is on pup, and that is Emeka Egbuka. really high upside, and this guy just seems to be pushing for. I mean, it was last week we were talking about, is he going to be wide receiver 2? Now there's talks that Evans is going to potentially sit behind him, and he's going to be a wide receiver 1 till Chris returns. I just think the sky's the limit. I'm just looking at some comments, some stats here, I should say, but his ADP is like wide receiver 40 to 50. So really, you know, even in the bigger leagues, you're going to be able to get this guy sort of round 8, 9 upwards, I think. But he is a real sleeper pick. If you get into round 5 or 6 and you think, I'm struck between, you know, a couple of choices here, grab Agbuka, because he could genuinely be a wide receiver 1. And his floors, you know, his floor's a low-end sort of wide receiver 4, so you've not really lost much risk. You pick him up, and you can probably drop him back off in the waivers if it doesn't work out. A lot of people are handcuffing him to Chris Godwin as well, like myself. So if you have got Godwin on the pup, get as much use out of Agbuka as you can, and then when you're done with him, send him on his way and bring Chris back in. But no, great pick. Great pick.
I think Oliver said it. Both those guys are destined for the waivers by week 4. So good advice, guys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm just through the roof on this guy, clearly. So I'm in delusional sleeper pick land, as we sometimes all can be.
Well, my round 6 Mike Evans doesn't like that advice. So yeah, we'll see.
He's knocking on the door.
He is. It looks good. So I've only got the one rookie who I traded for, actually. He's not a sleeper, so we don't have to go over that. Who I do have in a sophomore year is Marvin Harrison Jr.
Love
sort of the forgotten guy of 2024. He was. Everyone forgets he's the first non-quarterback taken last year, sort of before Neighbours, before Brian Thomas, before Odunze. He tied the most ever receiving touchdowns for a Cardinal rookie. He averaged the second highest receiving yards of all wide receivers last year, behind Brian Thomas Jr. So if Kyler Murray can get his act together, you know, we've all seen how he's bulked up over the offseason as well. He's got an ADP of 41st overall, wide receiver 18, so you can get him late. I got him at 67. So he's a solid, probably, you could put him in the flex or wide receiver 2. At best, he could be a genuine wide receiver 1. So I think there's a bit of a mix of optimism about how talented he is. Obviously, an uneven rookie season, there is that caution as well. But if you can pick him up later in the rounds, go for it.
Well, he was the talk of the town last year for last year's draft, but he just didn't hit it off because obviously, unfortunately, he's inside the Arizona Cardinals, where Kyler Murray needs to get his act together if Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to shine. But no, really, really nice pick. Well, looking ahead to our Week 1 matchup, Oliver, it's a rematch of the Super Bowl. It's going for Tua versus leader of the pack. Our projected points here is 123.5 for me versus 115.9. So a lot for you to do in terms of catching up those projected points, but you have to remember, unfortunately, I've got Travis Kelce as a tight end who might not even make it the full length of the match. So it's all to play for. Smells, who are you after? Who are you?
So I've got this one's going to Hurts, who last year had a pretty good run against me, strangely, although he missed out on the playoffs. I am currently scheduled to win. I've got a expected score of just over 126. I wish it was 186. Maybe that's after week 1. And he's got 121. My biggest issue is that he's got Saquon Barkley against Dallas.
Big risk.
So if Barkley goes 30, 40 points, aside from that, it's going to be an easy win, clean sweep for me.
And both of Barkley's games last year against Dallas, he was so dominant. So that's a really interesting watch.
Yeah, I still think you're going to have a pretty clean sweep, Smells. In terms of our draft grades, I was a B, projected 6 and 9. Smells, you smashed it according to the fantasy results.
I was an A-, slightly down on last year's A+ with a 15 and 0. I'm only expected to be 13 and 2 this year, but still finishing first.
Only, and Oliver?
So hopefully, yeah.
How many wins?
Just the one.
Just the one win.
Just the one. Know who you're beating throughout the season.
Did you not hear me speak about my injured, overpriced RB1, my traded for Bucky?
I just think that's a bit of a skill issue. I just think you drafted poorly.
Igbuka. Don't forget my tight end, who's actually tight end 7 overall in Evan Ingram. So listen, I'm fine.
So we've definitely got some fantasy matchups coming up in week 1. There's also some football, believe it or not. And the early hours, we'll go through the games to watch and preview the entire game week on Thursday's episode. We'll see you there.